Zambo, and welcome to Dawai Kudroen. My guest tonight, as introduced already, is Mr. Yonten, who is the Chief Executive Officer of DHI. So, welcome to the program, and thank you so much for your time, sir. To start with, are you happy with the progress made by DHI so far? Since the inception itself, for several years, DHI has been under lots of public scrutiny, and every time you log into any anonymous or online forums, there'll be something written about your company. So, are you happy with the progress made so far?
Thus, before we get into that, I just wanted to thank you for inviting us as your guest here on your program today. And to answer your question, I think we are very happy with how far DHI has come over the last 6.5 years now. It's been quite a long journey since the time that DHI started. And as you are aware, also the first time we came on the program, there was a lot of negativity, a lot of criticism about DHI, why it was created, what it was supposed to do. And I think looking back at the results over the last 6 years, I think we can satisfactorily say that I think we are very happy with how far DHI has come so far.
So, lots of things developing, and especially at times like today, when you look at our current economic situation, what do you think? What is your company doing on all this current economic situation?
Plus, on the economic front, I think it's a cause for concern for everyone, especially the state of the economy and the austerity measures that we are all going through to try and help the economy. From DHI's side, I think we've also taken a lot of austerity measures. We were supposed to build our corporate offices, I think DHI, the Bank of Bhutan, Druke, DGPC, BOB. But in view of the current economic situation, that is something that we've put on hold. And then also we are looking at ways and means of trying to reduce costs at the companies. But at the same time, I think since we are all commercial companies, at the end of the day, I think if the companies are able to perform well and keep generating the profits, I think that's the best that we can do in terms of giving back to the government the revenues and the taxes that it requires. So yes. I think as long as we focus on the performance of our companies, as long as they keep doing well, I think that is the biggest service that I think DHI companies can do for the economy.
Yes. One of the concerns or one of the expectations that private business entities would have is to get some sort of assistance or support from DHI for private sector development.
Yes.
And this is one area that people talk so much about yet, but not much has been done. So what have you been doing on this front, private sector development? Of course, there are other reasons why private sector is not growing as expected.
Yes. No, I think one of our key mandates that's given in the charter is to stimulate private sector development and also lead private sector development. So on that front, I think DHI has been making a lot of effort to engage the private sector. But I think it takes two hands to clap, I think. From our side, we've come up with a DHI private partnership framework.
Yes.
So that essentially lays out the framework for working together with the private sector. So if you have a project of over 100 million, we are saying that DHI is open to partnerships with the private sector. In the past, we've had a few discussions with a few companies that did come up to DHI to see whether it was possible to take some of the projects forward. But for various reasons, business viability issues and things like that, we weren't able to go forward with them.
Yes.
So that is still an open proposition to the private sector that DHI is there to partner up with them for some of the projects that they would require DHI's assistance. Now, on the other end of the spectrum is the much smaller entrepreneurs. And this is where we got feedback from the BCCI saying that, okay, you have this partnership program for the big businesses. What about the smaller entrepreneurs? And so we said, okay, we can set up something for the smaller entrepreneurs also. So we have started a Begin program, which is essentially a training program for potential entrepreneurs. And through that training program, we also provide a mentorship facilities for these entrepreneurs, because many of them are new entrepreneurs. They don't know how the system works. So they might go through the training, but when they start doing their projects, then they're not really aware of how the system works. So through this entrepreneurship program, then we have some seasoned businessmen who are guiding them through the process also. So that we expect will help them a little bit. Then we also have the Entrepreneurship Promotion Fund. So this is where once they finish their training and they have a good business proposition, they can come up to DHI and we can help them set up the business and get it running. In fact, we've started one business with Mr. Tsompemba on cold storage, and he started that and he's storing apples, I think, currently, and is hopefully will be selling it in the off-season time. So if there are business propositions like that, I think we are very open. And in terms of BCCI also, Bhutan Chamber of Commerce and Industry, we do provide them financial assistance to do some of the things that they require to do. And it is a continuous dialogue that we have with them. And if you look at the current Better Business Summit also, this is an effort from DHI side to collaborate with the government, private sector, to promote the business environment here in Bhutan also.
Yes. Now, one of the challenges for DHI, as we see, as outsider,
Yes.
would be that you need to convince the government of the day to make policies or frame policies and plans that
Yes.
would actually assist private sector development rather than impeding private
Yes.
sector growth. What do you think of this, Law? How do you look at it? Will you be able to convince the government of the day? Especially the summit that you're looking at today is definitely going to be one area of focus.
Yes. I think DHI is actually in a unique position to provide the feedback that the government requires, because it's in between government and private sector. So the private sector, you would think, is at one end, the government's on the other end, the corporations are in between. And since we are owned 100% by the government, I'm sure the feedback that we give back to the government is taken in with much more credibility, I think. And so on that front, I think we have made a lot of feedback to the government, whether it's on certain policies, whether it's on the need to have certain acts in place, signing of certain treaties. Like, for example, we have this, we propose to the government that we need to sign the New York Convention for arbitration, because we realize that as FDI comes into Bhutan, arbitration is going to be a key issue on how you settle these sorts of things. And if you're a signatory to some of these international agreements, then it's much easier for them to come in also. Then we've also had this Cape Town Convention. That is mostly to do with the airlines. So if you're a signatory to that Cape Town Convention, then you can access financing for aircrafts at a much lower rate. And this benefits both Druke as well as Tashi Air, I think. So these sorts of common things that we propose to the government, I think the government has also been very positive, and they have also pressed for many of these things. Another one is MEGA membership, I think, to insulate us against political risk. And so these sorts of things are continuously happening, and we are providing policy feedback that the government is taking seriously.
Yes. Your company is also involved in some kind of businesses, and you have been assisting some small private entrepreneurships as well. So in this regard, how well are we as Bhutanese when it comes to business? A few years back, World Bank actually pointed out that Bhutan is one of the difficult countries to do business with. Are we improving on this line?
Well, I suppose to judge whether we are improving on that line or not is to look at the international benchmarks, and the ease of doing business by the World Bank, I think, has shown that we were doing well once, then we slipped down in the rankings again. Now we've come back again to 141 or something. And I think now this government has at least expressed its commitment that within the next 2 years, they would like to move within the top 100. So I think that is a very positive move from the government side. And if you're able to do that, it will definitely, I think, ease the way we do business here in Bhutan.
One area that DHI also expressed concern, and also DHI was willing to help, is employment generation. How
Yes.
well are you on this track?
For employment generation to be sustainable, I think you have to be able to start sustainable businesses. And so on that front, I think if you look at the businesses new businesses that DHI is currently doing, there's the Dungsam cement plant that has come online. We're expecting that it will create about 200 direct and indirect jobs. There's Dungsam Polymers Limited, which will supply poly bags to Dungsam. So that is employing about 160, 70 people. Then we have Tagachu Hydropower project coming up under DGPC. That will also employ about 200 people. Then we have Bhutan Hydropower Services that is also being done by DGPC together with Alstom. So that will create another 100, 200 jobs. the IT park that DHI has done with Assets Property Group. Already we have 200 plus people being employed there, and once it really picks up, we are expecting the numbers to increase to about 500. So all of these businesses, I think, are generating employment for the Bhutanese people. And this is where we see one of our primary responsibilities also is that in addition to creating companies that are profitable, we also need to create companies that generate jobs for the Bhutanese people.
Yes, sir. I have actually informed some of the people through Facebook and some other means that I'm going to have you as my guest tonight. So one of the questions that I was asked to throw is, how keen has DHI been on corporate social responsibility? Not people think that not much has been done on this front.
Alas, I think when you look at corporate social responsibility in terms of the government-owned companies, there are two differing points of view, Mabala. There's one view from the government and there's one view from the private sector, Mabala. The view from the government is that all the DHI-owned companies are essentially government companies.
Yes.
So the dividends that we get from these companies goes back to the government, and that dividend is used by the government for various social activities like building roads, hospitals, schools. So in a sense, most of our dividends, unlike private sector companies where the dividends go to private individuals, and there's a need to do corporate social responsibility actively to give back to society. DHI companies are already giving back to society by the public services they are providing.
Yes.
So that is one part. But on the other side, we still understand that our companies are operating in different areas, and they also need to give back to the communities that they are working with. So we have come out with a CSR, corporate social responsibility policy for our companies. Now we can't, although our companies are very big, we can't be very generous with the amounts that we give out on corporate social responsibility, because we are responsible to our shareholder, the Ministry of Finance also. And so the more we give here, the less we have to give back to the ministry. So from that perspective, I think we are trying to balance it to make sure that the companies have enough to give out in terms of corporate social responsibility, and then they're also giving back to the government for its own larger corporate social functions.
Yes. So another issue that people are concerned about today is the status, or how conducive is Bhutan for FDI, especially with reference to the recent development on Education City. What do you think, sir?
I think the government has made a lot of efforts to try and promote FDI in Bhutan. They've come up with a new FDI policy as well as economic development policy. So from that front, I think it is doing a lot. I think the government did go on a road show also. It was in Europe, Singapore, Thailand, to try and promote FDI in Bhutan. But in the end, I think if you don't have the opportunities within Bhutan to have the companies come, then it's very limited, Mevala. And so currently, I think when you're looking at Bhutan, one of the biggest sellers that we have is power, Mevala.
Yes.
And currently, we are already out of power since it's already been allocated to all of the industries. So there is still a lot of interest in FDI, but I think everyone is waiting for the power situation to improve. So once you have Punatsanchu 1, Punatsanchu 2, and Mandichu coming in, then I think you'll see a rush of FDI again coming in into Bhutan, into these areas. And when you're looking at the hotel sector also, I think we see a lot of FDI activity in the hotel sector. Just last year, I think UMA opened another hotel in Punakha. Then we are hearing about Six Senses also coming up in Bhutan. And then there's several other hotel properties that are being developed and that will be managed by foreign partners. So all those go to indicate that I think the interest is still there in Bhutan.
You still believe that private FDI will be encouraged, especially with what has happened on Education City, with sudden closure?
Well, I suppose there are issues that need to be ironed out between the government agencies, and this is a good opportunity for the government to iron out things that need to be done. And so if there are differences, I think once they are sorted out, it'll open the path again, because this is the first time that we are opening up a major sector like education to FDI. And so there may be teething problems, but I think once the teething problems are solved, then that'll give more clarity about the policies in that sector. And once that clarity comes in, then with the clarity also comes in the opportunities, I think.
So one area that the Better Business Summit is going to focus is on green economy.
Yes.
Now, if you could tell us a little more on this green economy aspect. We talk a lot about it, but people does not really seem to be convinced, especially with the challenges that are associated with this concept of green economy.
No, I think when you're talking about the green economy and Bhutan wanting to move along in that direction, I think that's a visionary sort of direction that you're looking at going. We all know that currently the industries that we have are not the very best in terms of environmental standards. They are very polluting. We don't have as rigid environmental standards to reduce the pollution from these industries. So I think having learned a lesson from there, it is to try and see now, going forward, what do we do? And so, of course, we hear about the green economy from all parts of the world and what different people are trying to do. And so, and this is one of the reasons that we've put it up as a discussion point in the summit also, is to help us find our way through all the discussions that are taking place so that we can come up with some concrete suggestions on what are the types of industries that constitute a green economy. Does Bhutan have competitive advantage to set up these competitive industries? We talk about clean tech industries. What are the clean tech industries? So there's a lot of talk going around, but there's no real concrete distillation of the ideas and the industries that we would like to promote. Now, for example, if you take the IT park, that would be considered as a green sort of an industry because it is not very polluting compared to other manufacturing industries, but it provides a lot of employment and a lot of business also. And together with that, we're also looking at, like, if you look at data centers within the IT park, one of the main requirements for data centers is energy, and that is what we have, a lot of energy. So we know that we have excess energy. There are power-intensive industries that require power, and we are competitive in that front. But now, how do we identify particular industries that require power but are also green in nature? So that is a challenge for us, I think, to go ahead and identify some of these sorts of industries. And agribusiness is something that is being talked about. So this is what we are trying to do through this summit also, to have a wide-ranging discussion on these issues and then try and zoom down on some of the industries that will be possible here in Bhutan.
Yes, but in essence, this must be really challenging because without creating a sizable amount of impact on the environment, any business that is to be established may not necessarily be possible. So the challenges ahead that you see with green economy?
Definitely challenging. Like I mentioned just now, we are not really sure which are the industries, even with what kind of industries will be suitable for Bhutan. And so that is where I feel that maybe we need to make a more concerted effort to identify the types of industries. So currently the discussions are focused here within Bhutan. We talk amongst ourselves.
Yes.
But have we actually gone out to visit other countries to see what are they doing in terms of the green economy? What sort of industries are they promoting? How is it addressing environmental issues? And even while we're talking about heavy industrialization, as long as I think we are able to put in place state-of-the-art pollution control methodologies, that would still, I think, qualify as some sort of greening of the economy, as long as you're reducing pollution. And so those are all different opportunities that are out there. And if you explore them enough, I think that is where we need to find time to actually look around, see what is happening, what is possible, and then see whether that will be suitable to Bhutan. So while we've been discussing a lot, I think we really haven't put our time, effort, and focus on actually identifying areas that would be suitable for Bhutan.
Yes. So now one area, the major area of revenue generation for Bhutan is hydropower.
Yes.
And we're doing quite well on this front. But don't you think we also need to look at alternatives apart from hydropower? Because we've been talking to some foreigners and they said we should not heavily rely on hydropower alone, and there should be some serious alternatives that Bhutan need to think about. What do you think, sir?
Yes, and I think that is a very valid point, and that is one of the themes for discussion at the Better Business Summit also, because I think we often hear the phrase that we should not put all our eggs in one basket. But of course, the baskets in Bhutan are limited. And for us, I think hydropower presents the largest potential. And so what we are essentially doing is trying to exploit the potential that we have. And so when we're talking about developing 10,000 megawatts, it fits right in with what we are doing, Mawala.
Yes.
But at the same time, I think we also need to try and identify other business opportunities or business sectors in order to try and diversify risk away from hydropower. Because if something were to happen in the hydropower sector that we are not sure about, then that trickles down the risk to the economy also, Mawala. And so whether depending too much on hydropower is very good or not is the big debate. And so this is where I think the discussions are also taking place, that maybe we need to look at other areas. And so we talk about tourism as one big potential for Bhutan. Then we talk about manufacturing industries as an opportunity for Bhutan, agro-business as an opportunity for Bhutan. And this is where I think today also when we discussed, we were saying that, the hydropower sector is moving along very quickly because of the amount of priority being given to hydropower sector.
Yes.
So maybe we should be giving a sufficient amount of priority to the other sectors also, like tourism.
Yes.
Because when you look at the tourism sector, the private sector is making a lot of investments in hotels. If you look at Paro, there's a number of hotels coming up. Thimphu, there's a number of hotels. Punakha, Pumtang. So the private sector is going full out in terms of making investments in tourism. But the concern is that maybe the government is not making sufficient investments into tourism infrastructure. I think we've had many discussions on some very bare necessities in the tourism sector that are still not being met.
Yes.
And so if the government puts in that little effort, maybe you could see a larger acceleration of growth in tourism.
Yes.
And in terms
what
of
about DHI? Can DHI intervene and do certain things on your own without
yes,
having to wait for the government, especially in hospitable industries?
In fact, in the hospitality sector, that is something that we see as a big potential for Bhutan. And as I was mentioning, since power is limited, there's not many industries that you can do. So we were looking at investments in the hospitality sector. One opportunity is that a wellness resort that we were looking at in Punakha. So there seems to be some private sector concerns also about DHI doing this project there. Then we were also looking at the convention center here in Thimphu, together with a hotel, so that we promote MICE tourism. So both of these, actually from DHI side, we were looking at trying to expand the basket of activities that are available for tourism, because the wellness sector is still new in Bhutan. It hasn't opened up, and we thought that maybe opening it up, if that is successful, then you could have many other wellness centers coming up here in Bhutan. It could become a hub for wellness. And with regard to the convention center, then you have an entirely different clientele coming in for MICE tourism. So those are some things that we've looked at, and we are still considering and seeing how we can move forward on those issues.
Yes. So from the conversation and also by talking to the people, we have been made to understand that be it hospitality industries or any kinds of businesses in Bhutan, private sector do not really seem to be so keen in developing any kind of partnership with DHI. Any specific reasons that you gauged?
Well, I think that question will be more suitable for the private sector. We can only conjecture as to why they may not be willing to partner.
But it's true that they have not been forthcoming.
No, maybe they see better opportunities than DHI in the kinds of businesses that they're doing. Maybe the projects that we're looking at are much larger than the projects that they would like to be involved in. When you're looking at the wellness project, it's about $35 million. So if they come in and as an investor, then it is a small part of the shareholding that they can own, whereas maybe if private sector comes in, then they want a much larger share of their shareholdings. Maybe they want controlling stake in the projects that they want to do. So maybe various reasons from the private sector side. But from our side, I think, like I said, we are open as long as it's in an innovative sector, it's in a different type of business that from what the current private sector is doing.
Yes. So you have your own experts in your office, and I'm sure you also must be having experts who can look into, observe, and study the current economic situation. What do you think about the recent future that we are talking about, the economic situation of our country? Are we hopeful that we can recover from the austerity measures that we have already put in place? Will there be any lift on these issues or these measures?
I think when you looking at the long-term future of Bhutan, we have to be optimistic, I think, given all the developments that are taking place. Like I was saying once, we have 3 big power projects that are happening in Bhutan. Once those projects get completed, that creates a whole lot of opportunities for manufacturing industries to come in, creating employment. And so I think what we are going through is transitory process from where we were at. Maybe there were some corrective measures that needed to be taken in order to bring the economy back online. So some of the measures may seem harsh, but maybe necessary in order to bring things on track. But issues like I suppose the bans and all that maybe you're referring to, maybe there are other ways of dealing with these sorts of issues than just having bans, because I don't think bans are the most effective ways of dealing with these sorts of situations.
So, in particular, now when you're talking about bans or lifting the bans on certain products or businesses that were put to by the former government. Now today when you look at all this situation holistically and rate the current economic situation properly, lots of talks going on that we may not actually recover, and one serious concern is about the national debt. We have borrowed so much, and looking at the current economic situation, will we be able to repay all these debts? So what do you think, sir?
On the debt front, I think you have to look at the sustainability of the debt, what the money has been borrowed for, and whether you are going to be able to pay it off or not. And I think a substantial part of the debt has been borrowed for hydropower projects. And these are, I think, self-liquidating debt. So from that point of view, I think, well, yes, we have a huge amount of debt, but are we going to be able to pay it off? I think we will be able to pay it off. So the concern is there, and then maybe that is where we look at trying to see, whether such high debt levels are going to be sustainable in future if we continue borrowing at these levels. But the other concern on the debt part is while you are borrowing so much money for hydropower, the concern is what impact does this have on other sectors?
Yes.
So that the crowding out effect on other sectors may be a concern instead, I think, because hydropower it's a sector that has huge potential, and so it can pay off its own debt, Mewala. But other sectors that want to borrow, but because you have such high debt levels in one sector, could impact the other sectors.
Yes, yes. So one concern that was so much raised on this economic situation, and government actually came up, as you know, has come up with a plan called economic stimulus plan to stimulate the economic growth. Now, putting this measure in place, lots of comments, lots of feedbacks and discussions went on this economic stimulus plan. And one of the serious feedbacks or comments, let's say suggestions, came up from the parliament itself, is from the National Council, is that this kind of economic stimulus plan should be first and last of its kind. What do you think? Do you think it's good for the economy? I know the question is too political in nature, but your views?
I don't think it needs to be political in nature. I think it just shows the shifting priorities now. Because when you look at the 5-year plans that we have, those have generally been very social in nature. I think building roads, hospitals, schools. And now you're looking at this economic stimulus plan to stimulate the economy. So this is, I think, when you're looking forward now, maybe some emphasis has to shift from the social development part to business support and commercial part.
Yes.
Because now when you look at what Bhutan's goals are, by 2020 you want to become a fully self-reliant country economically. And so in order to become fully self-reliant, then your 5-year plan also has to reflect that change towards a more commercial type of economic development. So maybe it should not come in as a stimulus plan outside of the plan, but should be included within the plan itself to bring about the changes that are required. So in a sense, yes, maybe you shouldn't go for a different package as an economic stimulus plan, but when you're looking at the plan as a whole, maybe it should be incorporated within that. Because like for instance, in this case, you have a certain amount of funds being allocated for development of special economic zones or the industrial estates. So if you can incorporate it in those sorts of activities that the government needs to do, then it doesn't need to come out of the plan. And so maybe the suggestion from the NC also is that why come out of the plan? You include it in the plan and you can still achieve what you need to achieve. And going forward, I think we'll have to do more and more of that if you want to be more actively involved in the commercial sector. Because we talk a lot about PPP projects, public-private partnership. And this is where, when the government doesn't have enough money, it is looking for funds to come out from the private sector to do certain projects.
Yes.
But at the same time, I think for the private sector, it might not be financially viable. So the government has to provide a certain amount of viability gap funding, that is to top up for the profits of the private sector. And some of these things could actually come within the plan itself, so that whatever we think is not financially viable can still be done through this topping up of the funds through the viability gap funding sort of model. So going forward, I think if you want to support private sector, if you want to move in a more commercial direction, maybe that is what the government will have to look at also.
Yes. So final comments from your side. Do you think we will achieve self-reliance by 2020, especially looking at the current economic situation?
I think if you have the will, if you're able to set the target, you have the vision, you have a strategy, you have a plan in place, I don't think it is impossible.
Yes.
We have achieved many things in the social sector that were very, very ambitious. For example, rural electrification. The target was to achieve rural electrification by 2020. That target got shifted to 2017. That target got shifted to 2013. But we succeeded, and that was in the social sector. The
Yes.
government was able to raise $120 million and basically electrify all the households. So as long as you have a plan, I think, and you're able to come up with a strategy on how to implement it, and you put all your resources to achieving those aims and objectives, I think it should be possible. It's just that we need to have a very concerted sort of drive towards that direction.
Yes, sir. Mr. Yonten, thank you so much for your time.
Yes, thank you.
Well, on this very positive note, we would like to come to the end of Dawai Kudroen session for tonight. Thank you so much for watching. Tashidalil.